It's October 24th, 1944, over the Philippine Sea. An endless expanse of brilliant blue sky stretches overhead, interrupted only by dark bursts of anti-aircraft fire from what would become the largest naval engagement in human history. Inside the cramped cockpit of his F6F Hellcat fighter, Commander David McCampbell sits poised at 18,000 feet above the Pacific waters. At 34 years of age, he's considered practically ancient by the unforgiving standards of fighter aviation, where most pilots are barely out of their 20s. McCampbell leads Air Group 15, the legendary unit known throughout the fleet simply as the fabled 15. By all rights and regulations, he shouldn't even be airborne for this particular mission. However, the radar display aboard the USS Essex is painting an absolutely terrifying picture on its green, glowing screen. 70 miles out and closing fast, an enormous wave of Japanese aircraft is approaching in formation. The enemy consists of 3 distinct waves totaling 60 planes, all with one objective: to strike the American naval forces positioned below. The Essex has already scrambled every single fighter it had available to intercept other strikes elsewhere in the theater. The flight deck now stands completely empty, stripped of defenders. All reserve aircraft have been committed to combat. Only McCampbell and a single wingman remain available. 2 lone American fighters facing 60 Japanese warplanes in the open sky. The mathematics of this engagement spell nothing but certain death. Any rational, survival-minded pilot would immediately dive away, break contact, and escape to survive for another day's fighting. But running from a fight simply isn't written into David McCampbell's character. He takes a moment to glance down at his fuel indicator, mentally calculating his flight time. Then he methodically inspects his armament. 6 powerful .50 caliber Browning machine guns loaded with 2,400 rounds of ammunition ready to fire. He catches the eye of his wingman, Ensign Roy Rushing, and communicates his intentions with a simple hand signal. Retreat is completely off the table. Instead of fleeing, they're going on the offensive, taking the fight directly to the enemy. If you believe that history is ultimately shaped by those rare, exceptional individuals who stand absolutely firm when the odds become seemingly impossible, go ahead and like this video and hit that subscribe button. Here at WW2 Combat Sky, we're dedicated to preserving and documenting the stories of history's greatest warriors who ever took to battle. Now, let's return to that cramped cockpit high above the Pacific. To truly understand why a 34-year-old squadron commander would willingly throw himself into what appears to be a meat grinder of 60 enemy aircraft, you need to understand the strategic context of fall 1944. The Pacific War has reached its most violent and crucial crescendo moment. The United States Navy is systematically tightening the noose around the Empire of Japan, closing in from all directions. American forces have successfully returned to the Philippines, fulfilling a promise made years earlier. General Douglas MacArthur has already waded ashore at Leyte, making his famous return. But the Japanese Navy is far from finished or defeated. They've launched Operation Shogo 1, their desperate gamble for victory. It's an incredibly complex, high-stakes plan designed to lure the American carriers away from the landing zones and then smash the vulnerable invasion fleet using massive battleships. The stakes couldn't be higher or more total. If the Japanese succeed in executing this plan, thousands of American Marines currently on the exposed beaches of Leyte will be completely cut off and systematically slaughtered. The tip of the American offensive spear is Task Force 38, the Fast Carrier Task Force, floating cities constructed of steel and gasoline that project power across thousands of miles of ocean. Among this powerful fleet steams the USS Essex, designated CV-9, the proud lead ship of her entire class. And commanding the Essex's air wing with distinction is Commander David McCampbell. McCampbell represents a completely different breed of naval aviator. Born in Bessemer, Alabama, he's not some hot-headed, reckless kid fresh out of flight school looking for glory. He's a disciplined Naval Academy graduate from the class of 1933, educated in the finest traditions of naval warfare. He was actually kicked out of the Navy once during the Great Depression budget cuts for what they deemed insufficient eyesight, only to determinedly fight his way back into service. He spent long years working as a landing signal officer, an LSO, methodically waving other men's aircraft onto the pitching carrier deck. He watched close friends crash into the ocean. He watched friends die in flames. Through these experiences, he learned the invaluable virtue of patience under pressure. He learned through harsh experience that in naval aviation, iron discipline matters infinitely more than empty bravado or showboating. By 1944, he's risen to the position of a CAG, Commander Air Group. His official job is to strategically manage the entire air battle from above, not to personally engage in dogfighting himself. He flies a Grumman F6F Hellcat fighter, a plane he's personally named, quote, one after his wife. The F6F Hellcat is definitely not a pretty or elegant plane to look at. It's a brutally efficient factory of violence, purpose-built for one thing. The pilots who fly it affectionately call it the aluminum tank because of its rugged construction. It was designed and built for one very specific purpose, to systematically hunt down and kill the legendary Japanese Zero. It's powered by a massive 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R, 2800 double wasp engine, a radial powerhouse that pulls the heavy airframe through the sky at speeds approaching 380 miles per hour. It's heavily armored, incredibly rugged, and remarkably forgiving of pilot errors. But perhaps its single greatest tactical asset is the ammunition capacity it carries. The Hellcat carries nearly double the ammunition load of many of its contemporary fighters, giving it extended combat capability. It's specifically designed for sustained, prolonged combat engagements, and on this particular October morning, Commander McCampbell will desperately need every single bullet loaded into his guns. The morning of October 24th unfolds in complete chaos across the task force. Urgent reports are continuously flooding in regarding Japanese battleships spotted in the Philippine Sea, heading toward the American positions. American strike planes are launching constantly from multiple carriers in waves. McCampbell has already flown one exhausting combat sortie earlier that morning, but when he lands back aboard the Essex, the ship's radar picks up a fresh, new threat developing. Raid 1, they designate it. A massive bogey contact detected to the north, heading directly toward the fleet. The Essex's flight deck is currently fouled with aircraft being rearmed and refueled. They can only manage to scramble 7 fighters in response. Just 7 aircraft. McCampbell doesn't hesitate. He jumps back into Mincy 3 without even taking time to rest. He doesn't even have a complete fuel load in his tanks. the tanks are only partially filled to get him off the deck faster and into the air. He roars down the flight deck at full throttle and climbs aggressively toward the threat. Within just a few short minutes, the tactical situation rapidly deteriorates from bad to worse. 5 of the 7 scrambled Hellcats are forced to turn back toward the carrier. Mechanical issues, engine trouble, and critically low fuel levels plague the hastily launched aircraft. They drop out of the defensive formation one by one, leaving gaps. Suddenly, the vast sky feels incredibly empty and exposed. It's now just Commander McCampbell and his loyal wingman, Ensign Roy Rushing. Rushing is young, naturally aggressive, and fiercely loyal to his commander. He pulls his Hellcat up alongside McCampbell's aircraft in tight formation. Quote 3. He transmits over the radio without hesitation. Below their position, the American fleet sits dangerously exposed to air attack. Above them in the distance, the massive Japanese formation finally appears as dark specks. It's an enormous V-shaped formation of fighters, Zeros, Oscars, and Tonys, all escorting dive bombers toward their targets. The Japanese pilots quickly spot the 2 lone American planes in their path. They don't seem particularly worried or concerned by the minimal opposition. Why would they be worried? It's 60 aircraft against just 2. McCampbell calmly observes the approaching swarm. He doesn't panic or lose his composure. He doesn't frantically call for help that simply isn't available to come. Instead, he smoothly opens his throttle to full power. The massive Pratt & Whitney engine responds with a thunderous scream. The trap is being set, but the Japanese pilots don't yet realize they're actually the ones caught inside it. The greatest, most fatal mistake any fighter pilot can make is to completely lose his head under pressure. When you find yourself outnumbered 30-1, pure aggression without thought is usually nothing more than a death sentence. If McCampbell simply dives straight into the middle of the Japanese formation, he'll be instantly swarmed from all directions. He'll be shot to pieces in mere seconds by concentrated fire. McCampbell knows the Japanese Zero fighter intimately from previous encounters. It's incredibly nimble, lightweight, and can turn on a dime in a dogfight. If he tries to engage them in a traditional turning dogfight, matching turn for turn, he loses that contest immediately. But the Hellcat possesses different crucial advantages: superior straight-line speed, better diving ability, and excellent altitude performance that the Zero can't match. McCampbell makes a tactical decision that will be carefully studied in war colleges for decades to come. He flatly refuses to dogfight on their terms. Instead, he chooses to methodically herd them like a shepherd controlling sheep. McCampbell climbs steadily to 25,000 feet altitude, carefully positioning himself well above the entire Japanese formation, where he holds the advantage. He uses the brilliant sun to completely hide his silhouette, making visual detection nearly impossible. He watches them carefully, studying their formation. The Japanese formation appears undisciplined and loose. They're weaving around carelessly, clearly confident in their overwhelming numbers. He keys his radio transmitter to Rushing. "We're going to work on the stragglers," he calmly instructs. This is the classic strategy of a wolf pack hunting larger prey. They will deliberately not attack the strong main body head-on. Instead, they'll systematically pick off the weak, the slow, and the aircraft flying on the vulnerable edges of formation. McCampbell rolls into his first diving attack. This isn't a wild strafing run. It's a precisely controlled high-speed slash attack. He screams down from altitude, rapidly reaching speeds of 400 miles per hour in the dive. The Hellcat shudders violently under the intense G-forces compressing his body. He carefully lines up his gun sight on a Japanese A6M0 flying isolated on the outer edge of the formation. He forces himself to wait patiently. 800 yards closing, 600 yards, 400 yards. Finally, he squeezes the trigger firmly. All 650 caliber guns erupt simultaneously. The Hellcat shudders as bright tracers pour out in a deadly stream. The Zero, completely unarmored and fragile, catches fire almost instantly. It explodes into a spectacular orange fireball. McCampbell doesn't waste time watching it fall to the ocean. He immediately pulls hard back on the stick, using his immense kinetic energy from the dive to rocket back up into altitude where he's untouchable. Boom and zoom, the classic energy fighting tactic. One enemy down, 59 to go. The Japanese formation reacts like an angry, disturbed beehive. Multiple fighters break formation chaotically to chase after him. They pull their noses up steeply, trying desperately to catch the climbing American fighter. This is precisely exactly what McCampbell wants them to do. The Hellcat has significantly superior energy retention in climbs. The following Japanese planes stall out trying to reach his altitude. As they hang in the air, nearly motionless for a split second before falling back down, they're completely helpless targets. McCampbell and Rushing methodically repeat the deadly maneuver. They dive with speed, they fire with precision, they climb to safety. Another Zero goes down trailing thick black smoke. Then a Tony, a Kawasaki Ki-61 fighter, follows. The Japanese pilots are becoming increasingly confused and disorganized. They can't seem to corner or trap these two elusive Americans. Every single time they try to swarm and overwhelm them, the Hellcats are already gone, climbing back toward the blinding sun. For the next grueling 90 minutes, a strange mechanical rhythm takes over the battle. McCampbell operates with methodical precision like a surgeon. He's not wildly spraying bullets in all directions. He's carefully conserving everything he has. He fires only in short, tightly controlled bursts. 1 second of fire, 2 seconds maximum. He patiently watches until a Japanese fighter drifts too far from his protective wingman. Then he strikes. Dive, fire, kill, climb. It becomes almost mechanical in its efficiency. At one point, during the engagement, McCampbell finds himself diving on a Japanese fighter that attempts to loop up and over him in a desperate maneuver. McCampbell calmly pulls lid, calculating the deflection angle needed. He fires a concentrated burst directly into the enemy's engine block. The plane simply disintegrates in midair. Rushing is doing his part admirably, too. The young ensign is sticking to McCampbell like glue, protecting his vulnerable tail section and taking his own shooting opportunities. They operate like a perfectly coordinated two-man demolition crew. The Japanese pilots begin to genuinely panic as losses mount. They're losing planes so rapidly fast, they assume they must be under attack by an entire squadron. They start breaking formation in confusion. They frantically drop their bombs into the ocean to gain speed for escape. McCampbell has achieved his primary tactical objective successfully. The fleet below is now safe from this attack. The bombers have aborted their mission, but he isn't finished yet. He still has ammunition remaining, and he still has fuel in his tanks. The run-and fight has drifted over 100 miles from the starting point. They're now far from the safety of the Essex. The fuel gauges in both Hellcats are dropping steadily into the red danger zone. Normally, this is when any sensible pilot turns for home. But McCampbell observes something important. The Japanese fighters, now without their bomb loads, are turning back toward Luzon trying to escape. They're running away. McCampbell looks across at Rushing's aircraft. He asks. Comes the reply. McCampbell decides. They pursue the retreating enemy deeper into hostile territory. This becomes the most dangerous phase of the entire engagement. They're now deep in enemy-controlled airspace, running critically low on gas, and physical fatigue is seriously setting in. Flying a fighter plane in sustained combat is physically exhausting beyond imagination. The intense G-forces drain blood from your brain repeatedly. The massive adrenaline dump leaves you shaking, yet McCampbell's hands remain perfectly steady on the controls. He lights a cigarette in the cockpit. No, actually, he doesn't have time for that luxury. He chews on a cigar stub he keeps tucked away for luck. He checks his gun sight alignment. He lines up the next victim in his crosshairs. As the chase continues relentlessly, McCampbell enters what athletes call a state of flow. He's no longer just a pilot flying a plane. He's become a surgical precision instrument. He spots two Zeros flying close together in formation. A standard section pair. Usually, you pick one as your target. McCampbell decides to take both of them. He dives again, gaining tremendous speed. He aligns his gun sights carefully on the trailing plane. A short, precise burst. The right wing of the Zero violently shears off. The plane enters an uncontrollable flat spin. McCampbell doesn't climb away this time. He maintains his forward energy and slides his sights smoothly onto the lead plane. The Japanese pilot doesn't even know his wingman is already dead behind him. McCampbell fires deliberately. The fuel tank in the Zero's fuselage ignites spectacularly. 2 kills in just 10 seconds of action. He checks his ammunition counters. He's running dangerously low on 50 caliber rounds. He has now shot down 5 planes total. That officially makes him an ace in a day, in a single morning's work. But there are still more targets ahead in the fleeing formation. Rushing radios overexcitedly. Raus, quote, Daus 9. Ja, quote, 10. McCampbell orders calmly. The 2 Americans are now simply harvesting the disorganized enemy formation like farmers. The Japanese pilots are completely demoralized by the sustained attack. They're flying straight and level, just desperately trying to get home alive. They've completely lost the will to fight back. McCampbell pulls up directly behind a Nakajima Key 43 Oscar. He's so close he can actually see the pilot's head clearly in the cockpit ahead. He presses the trigger. Click. Only 3 guns fire. The others are jammed or completely empty. The uneven torque from the asymmetric recoil throws his plane sideways violently. He wrestles the stick, kicks the rudder pedal hard, and realigns his aircraft. He fires the remaining functioning rounds. The Oscar explodes into flames. He's now at 7 confirmed kills. Most pilots go through an entire war without ever seeing 7 enemy planes in total, let alone shooting them all down. He spots another straggler falling behind. He has to aim extremely carefully now. He can't afford a deflection shot at an angle. He needs a perfect no-deflection shot from directly behind. He creeps in closer, closer still. He waits patiently until the enemy completely fills his windscreen. He gently taps the trigger. 8 kills. Finally, a lone fighter attempts to dive away toward the cloud deck over Luzon. McCampbell chases him down relentlessly. He has only a few seconds of firing time remaining in his guns. He anticipates the Japanese pilot's next turn. He fires a final burst directly into the cockpit area. The plane begins smoking and noses over into the jungle far below. 9 confirmed kills in a single sortie. It's a record that has never been broken by any American pilot in history. Rushing has shot down 6 enemy aircraft himself. Together, just 2 men have destroyed 15 enemy aircraft in merely 90 minutes of combat. The silence returns to the sky. The sky is finally empty of enemies. The Japanese formation has been completely shattered. The survivors have scattered in all directions. Now the adrenaline finally fades away, and the harsh reality of physics takes over. McCampbell looks down at his fuel gauge with concern. It's effectively reading 0. He's currently over Luzon, deep in enemy territory. The Essex is over 100 miles away across open water. He radios to Russian, quote, 11. They drop their engine RPMs to minimum. They lean the fuel mixture until the engines are barely running, just sipping gas. They glide more than they actually fly. The flight back is absolutely agonizing. Every passing minute, they expect the engine to cough and die completely. If they're forced to ditch in the water here, they will likely never be found or rescued. Or even worse, they might be captured by Japanese forces, who are definitely not known for their mercy toward downed pilots. The fleet finally appears on the distant horizon, tiny gray specks on an endless blue carpet of ocean. McCampbell calls the tower, Consumer 1 inbound. Dry fuel, I repeat, dry. The Essex immediately clears the deck for emergency landing. They know something significant has happened based on the radio chatter they monitored. McCampbell lowers his landing gear carefully. He prays the hydraulic system still works. It does. He lines up perfectly on the deck. He has exactly 1 shot at this. He cannot possibly go around for another attempt. He doesn't have the fuel for a second pass. The landing signal officer waves him in urgently. Cut throttle. The Hellcat drops toward the deck. The tail hook catches the number 3 arresting wire. The cable stretches, groans, and violently snaps the plane to a complete halt. The engine sputters and dies instantly. It didn't stall out. It simply ran completely out of gas. There was exactly 1 gallon of fuel remaining in the tank, enough for perhaps 30 seconds of flight time. The deck crew rushes to the plane immediately. They're used to patching up holes from combat. They fully expect the plane to be riddled with bullet holes. They walk around Mincy, 3 carefully inspecting. There is not a single bullet hole anywhere, not 1 mark. In a prolonged fight against 60 aircraft, McCampbell was never even touched once. Then the ordnance men open the gun bays to rearm the plane for the next mission. They freeze in disbelief. The Hellcat normally holds 2,400 rounds of ammunition total. McCampbell has exactly 2 rounds left, just 2 bullets. He destroyed 9 aircraft and forced a massive enemy formation to completely retreat. And he used almost every single piece of lead he carried to accomplish it. McCampbell climbed stiffly out of the cramped cockpit. He's stiff, soaked in sweat, and completely exhausted. His entire face is covered in black soot from the gun gases. Rushing lands right behind him safely. The young ensign is grinning broadly. "We had a field day, Cag," he says excitedly. McCampbell just nods quietly. He walks slowly to the ready room. The intelligence officers don't believe his verbal report at first. 9 planes in 1 single flight? but the gun camera footage tells the undeniable story. The film is developed and reviewed. It shows plane after plane disintegrating under fire. It shows the discipline and precision. It shows the slight smile of a man who knew exactly what he was doing every moment. News of the .14 spreads rapidly through the fleet. It boosts morale at an absolutely critical moment. The larger battle of Leyte Gulf continues to rage on, but the air war has decisively turned. The Japanese naval air arm never recovers from the catastrophic losses of 1944. David McCampbell is immediately recommended for the Medal of Honor. The citation reads, quote, 15. President Roosevelt himself receives and reads the report personally. McCampbell becomes the, quote, 16 for the United States Navy. He finishes the entire war with 34 aerial victories total, the highest of any American Navy pilot in history. David McCampbell survived the war completely. He didn't rush to write a book immediately afterward. He didn't brag publicly about his achievements. He stayed in the Navy, continuing to serve, finally retiring as a captain in 1964. He passed away peacefully in 1996 in Florida at the age of 86. But his legacy isn't simply the medal or the impressive kill count. It's the powerful lesson of that day in October when the radar screen turned red with enemy contacts. When the impossible odds were 60-2, when fear screamed run and logic dictated hide, McCampbell deliberately turned his plane directly toward the enemy instead. The story of David McCampbell serves as a reminder that in the chaos of war, technology and numbers are only half of the equation. The other half is the crucial human element, the ability to stay completely calm when the world is burning around you, the ability to think clearly when others panic. McCampbell didn't survive because he was lucky. He survived because he was an absolute professional. He treated a 60-plane dogfight like a mathematical problem, and he solved it methodically, one bullet at a time. He was the hunter that day, and on that October morning, the sky belonged entirely to him. There was a time when giants walked the earth, and they flew Hellcats. If you enjoyed this deep dive into naval aviation history, click that subscribe button right now. We have many more stories of the legendary aces of World War II coming soon to WW2 Combat Sky. Let us know in the comment section, was the Hellcat truly the best carrier fighter of the war, or does the Corsair take the crown? Thanks for watching. Keep your airspeed up, and we'll see you in the next one.